It won't be news to parents, especially after the rush of getting children out the door and ready to get back to school. But, taking care of kids can be stressful. So much so that in the United States, the Surgeon General issued an advisory on the state of parental mental health. Dr. Vivek Murthy is himself a 47-year-old father of two, and he says that adults with children are more likely to report high levels of stress over the last decade than those without children. So joining us now to discuss this is psychologist Janine Hubbard. Hi, Janine.
Hi, Krissy.
Great to have you with us. My goodness. That is something else. I mean, what do you make of hearing that warning from the U.S. Surgeon General?
Well, it's kind of a mixture of, I think most of us, whether or not you have kids, you hear a statement that, well, parenting is stressful, and you kind of go, well, yeah. Doesn't that come as part of the issue? But I think what this is really highlighting is something that, again, we have normalized, but the breadth and depth and extent and impact of the parental stress goes far above I think what most of us think about when we think about, juggling kids and families and work responsibilities.
What do you think would have prompted Dr. Murthy to make a statement about parental mental health?
Well, I have to give him credit. He has really focused on a number of mental health issues. He's issued other statements around things like social media use. So he seems to be really prioritizing and looking at the research and saying, hey, there are some pretty big concerns that are systemic and perhaps need a lot more focus, need to be highlighted, and that need to be addressed on a systemic level.
Okay, so Dr. Murthy was specifically talking about parents in the U.S., but I mean, how different would things realistically be for parents in Canada?
Other than health insurance and some discussion around gun violence, I would say everything else is pretty applicable. I would generalize very much the reactions from the study.
So why is parenting so stressful these days?
Well, there's a couple of things. We see a lot of stigma. We see a lot of shame from parents inflicting it upon themselves, thinking, I'm just not good enough. There's social comparison. If you look at some of the mommy bloggers online and, all the perfect lunches that are going off in lunch boxes this week, as opposed to the reality where there's a lot of parents going, my kid has clean clothes. They might or might not match, and they have something that they are willing to eat in their lunchbox. Okay, I've done my job. As opposed to this false idea that is put out there by a lot of people in terms of, what the expectations should be. And unfortunately, I think we're all guilty of it at times too, that parenting is one of those thankless things that a lot of people are judgmental about. A lot of people have commentary about how you should be parenting. And meanwhile, there's a lot of people just trying to get through the day and do their very best to take care of their kids, take care of themselves, put food on the table, and try not to beat themselves up too much about it not being perfect.
What are some of the signs that parents should watch for, that they might be feeling a little bit too overloaded and maybe even edging to burnout?
Well, and it's such a hard thing to look at because if that's been your normal for a while, we often don't notice that kind of gradual spin. It's kind of like I talk about, driving a car where your tires aren't fully inflated. And sometimes you don't notice there's a problem until you have a flat. And then it's an emergency. And then you're dealing with kind of more of a crisis situation. So I'm hoping that hearing these results at the moment force everybody to go and check your tires. Metaphorically speaking, check in with each other with a, hey, I heard about this study. What did you think about it? What are the things that, you're maybe struggling with? We're very good at reaching out to parents in, the first month or so after birth, but we're not so great at going, how did return to school go? And we're not great at reaching out and saying, you know what? I can manage almost all of the rest of it, but I can't be in 4 places at once on Tuesday. Help. and reaching out with that. But some of it is also being mindful, looking at how disruptive is your sleep. Is it impacting things like your work and your focus? One of the most striking things to me from the study was looking at the cognitive impact of, that progressive stress, and it really impacting something we call executive functioning. That's that whole parenting skill to juggle all of the balls and keep them all up in the air at once. And that's something they're finding impacted. So also, if you're seeing that I just can't multitask the way I used to, and also, again, not doing the blame and the shame about it, but using that as a warning sign of, maybe there's too much going on. Maybe I need to take a look at my own stress levels as well as those of my kids.
And what is the impact of all of this stress on the parents, on the kids?
Well, at its most extreme, we have something called ACEs. These are adverse childhood experiences that we know can go on to have permanent lifelong impact on kids when they are adults in terms of both their mental health and their physical health. On the milder end of things, what we tend to see is kids don't develop good coping strategies. If their parents don't have good coping strategies, if their parents aren't able to kind of do the emotional regulation and the calming and the coping with adversities, they're not modeling that for the kids. And also, it's really hard for a kid to self-regulate if everybody else in the room is dysregulated. So we do see ongoing stressors and ongoing mental health issues, and sometimes just lack of skill development because it's not available to them for modeling and teaching.
But nobody wants to be stressed. It's kind of the reality of life, You see, like a lot of parents can't take a day off. They can't not do the things that they all got to do. Somebody's got to cook. Somebody got to clean.
Yep.
So what can parents do? What are the options?
Well, and some of it's that much more systemic issue of, I look at some of our local community services where there's drop-in after school for kids to go and do activities and get help with homework. Or there's mommy drop-in groups where, parents of young babies can go and get out of the house, but also get some of those supports in place. Like I say, it's kind of coming together as a community in many ways. And in an ideal world, listen, I would love for everyone to have both a family physician, but access to an integrated primary healthcare team where your visit, if you're there for your annual checkup, might include a nurse practitioner, might include a social worker or a psychologist, might include some questionnaires as a bit of a check-in. And to ask, because I think we make the assumption parenting is difficult, so we don't ask any further to see, is it difficult or is it at a point where it's impairing and overwhelming and additional supports are needed?
I just wonder if there's more to this. I'm getting the sense there is. Janine, can you explain what a wellness check-in is?
Well, that could be you reaching out after this interview today and checking in on with your friends and family and saying, how did the first day of school go? Or how are you coping? I know your baby hasn't been sleeping. So it's reaching out. And again, it's that non-judgmental, non-stigmatizing. It's okay to not be the perfect parent. And in fact, we talk about sometimes, I did not win Parent of the Year award this morning. Using some humor around it. So that could be informal with friends and family. That could be more formal through the medical system. But making sure that we're not just brushing it off as, of course you have stress.
Which, I don't know. Just it. I don't know what else you do with it all, but these are all great strategies. Janine Hubbard, as always, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for this. Very timely advice.
Well, thank you, Krissy. Appreciate it.
That's Janine Hubbard, a psychologist here in St. John's.